Is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
They think they've found the cause of a devastating jet crash. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. Investigators from the Ethiopian Airlines crash earlier this month now believe that a safety system in the Boeing 737 MAX aircraft, designed to prevent stalls, pushed the plane's nose down repeatedly, causing it to crash, killing all 157 people on board. The Wall Street Journal report that belief is based on data retrieved from the flight's black boxes. The paper also notes the clear similarities in the crash in one late last year by a Lion Air flight in Indonesia, which also killed everyone on board. Boeing has already outlined plans to overhaul the stall safety system to make it less aggressive and easier for pilots to control. President Trump calling out Democrats, the deep state, and what he called fake news in a rally in Grand Rapids Thursday night for trying to overturn the 2016 presidential election.
After 3 years of lies and smears and slander, the Russia hoax is finally dead.
The president said Democrats now have to decide if they're going to try to continue to defraud the American people, referring to ongoing congressional investigations. Republican members of the House Intelligence Committee unanimously calling on Committee Chair Adam Schiff to give up his gavel for his insistence that he'd seen the evidence of Trump collusion in the Trump campaign collusion with the Russians. Representative Schiff responding forcibly to calls for his resignation.
You might think it's okay that campaign chairman offered polling data, campaign polling data to someone linked to Russian intelligence. I don't think that's okay.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says she has no plans to remove Schiff as the Intelligence Committee chair. Execution in Texas blocked, the Supreme Court saying because the state would not allow a Buddhist spiritual advisor to attend Patrick Murphy's execution. This is Fox News.
If you have family or friends getting treatment right now at St. Luke's Medical Center in the Philippines, we want to connect with you. Hafaday, I'm Joe Guam. Thanks to our partners, we're bringing Mes Tamoru to St. Luke's in Global City. I'll be playing a free show on March 29th from 2 to 4 p.m. in the St. Luke's Piano Lounge for all our Guamanians out there. All family members accompanying the patient are invited to join us, but seats are limited, so please tell your family to go to joeguam.com to register online and reserve your spot. This event is presented by Guam Windward Memorial. Special thanks to our affiliate partners, Stay Well Guam, Take Care Insurance, Guam Hearing Doctors, Lombard Health Eye Clinic, Guam Premier Outlets, and Coast 360. Our contributing partners, Moylan's Net Care and Data Management Resources. Our supporting partners, American Music, Fizz & Co., The Coconut Tree Company, Kadu Restaurant, and our promotional partner, The Point, Siduos Mossids, and Biba Mes Tamoru.
I'm proud to be a Guamanian where America's day begins. And I can't forget the women and men who fought for my brown skin.
President Trump reversing a plan to cut funding for the Special Olympics.
I've been to the Special Olympics. I think it's incredible. And I just authorized a funding. I heard about it this morning. I have overridden my people. We're funding the Special Olympics.
Education Secretary Betsy DeVos had proposed eliminating nearly $18 million in Special Olympics funding from the federal budget. That's about 10% of the group's revenue. She has since issued a statement saying that she is pleased with the president's decision. Plans have been announced for another Korean summit meeting. This time, South Korea's President Moon Jae-in will travel to Washington in about 2 weeks from now for meetings with President Trump as the two men look for ways to try and entice North Korean leader Kim Jong-un to back away from his nuclear weapons program. More coaches embroiled in the college admission scandal, appearing in a Boston courtroom on Thursday.
Rudy Meredith, the former Yale women's soccer coach, pleaded guilty to wire and mail fraud Thursday. He was caught on tape by the FBI agreeing to get students into Yale by passing them off as athletic recruits. He could face 20 years on each count. After resigning last year, he cooperated with agents, aiding to uncover the wider-ranging admissions scam. Agents say parents acted through an admissions consultant to reach out to Meredith for enrollment help. A second coach, Michael Center, who coached men's tennis at the University of Texas, also appeared in court but did not enter a plea. College administrators, test proctors, and parents have also been caught in this scam. Gernal Scott, Fox News.
4 teams have reached the regional finals in the NCAA basketball tournament. Top-seeded Virginia beating Oregon 53-49 on Thursday night. Third-seeded Texas Tech has eliminated second-seed Michigan 63-44. Earlier, Purdue knocked off Tennessee in overtime, and Gonzaga beat Florida State. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Shrimp and guacamole for Lent at Subway. The all-new shrimp and guacamole combines generous portions of whole shrimp and a spread of guacamole served on freshly baked bread, paired with vegetables cut fresh daily in restaurants and sauces that are sure to excite your taste buds. Hurry in, it's only available for a limited time. Other fresh Lenten flavors include the classic tuna or the mouth-watering greatness of our seafood sensation. Don't forget the Veggie Max, a delicious and tasty vegetarian patty. Visit any of our convenient locations today. At Subway, you make it what you want.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. I think by now almost everyone in our international radio listening audience knows that, the wording of the Second Amendment, as well as I do, because we repeat it every day and for very good reason. We repeat it. I repeat it. Because I'm a firm believer in the Constitution of the United States and the fact that it secures and protects individual freedom. Perhaps not as well as I would like it to, and perhaps not as in the way that I thought the designers had planned it, but it's still by far the best system of government in the world. If saying that makes me a nationalist, well, by gosh, I'm a nationalist. So we go from the Second Amendment to the portion of the program that causes the real Joe Cruz to press a button and play the theme from Meet the Press. But you don't have to wait till Sunday to watch Meet the Press on Tall Tales, because we have a feature called Zemi Ikotni, which is my backwards, multilingual, bilingual play on words that roughly translates to Meet the Press. And that's the time when I become very critical of the editorials written by our two daily newspapers, Pacific Daily News and the Guam Post. After reading, analyzing, autopsying, parsing, parceling, whatever these editorials, I will oftentimes give the better of the two the coveted Blue Star Award. And sometimes I use my blue pencil to give less meritorious marks to a particular editorial. So I'm going to start out with the Post, and I'm going to read this from my iPad today. Once again, I didn't print it out and bring it along. Hardly worth the effort. This editorial is not attributed to an off-island source, but it's called ISIS in Remission, and it's all about Syria, President Trump's decision to remove troops from Syria, the American troops from Syria in the battle on ISIS, the fact that he changed his mind, etc. So this narrows the choice of the coveted Blue Star down to one paper, because if we want to read editorials dealing with national news, we could read Gannett papers or the WAPO ourselves, right? Unless there's an editorial in a national paper that actually has a Guam dimension, yeah, then maybe. But that's not the case today. So I go from there straight to the Post. And guess what the Post editorial is about? I'll give you three guesses, and I'll give you a hint. The answer starts either with an M or a C. Real Joe Cruz, you want to take one of the guesses?
Gambling, sir?
M or C?
I heard you.
Yeah.
Could it be cannabis or marijuana?
Yeah. I was wondering, Real Joe Cruz, are you as good at spelling as you are at aphorisms?
Yeah.
Okay.
I heard you, though.
All right. Okay. Yeah, it deals with gambling. Yeah, with marijuana and or cannabis. If you are in favor of Clint's Bill 32, it deals with cannabis. If you're opposed to Clint's Bill 32, it deals with marijuana. Depends on what you like and what you don't like, I guess. One of Governor Lou Leon Guerrero's first major tests since taking public office in January has arrived. On her desk, or soon to arrive in her office, rests one of the most contentious issues in more recent times for our island. 8 senators narrowly passed the recreational marijuana measure. Now, I gotta get out my blue pencil here. Okay, how many senators in the legislature? 15. When all 15 of them are there, how many does it take to pass a bill? Answer, 8. Is it possible to narrowly pass a bill? What do you think, Real Joe Cruz? If you get 15 votes, if you get 8 of the 15 votes, the bill passes.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Unless, unless you weigh everybody when they walk into the hall and you take the 8 people that weigh the least out of the 15, and then you have them vote for the bill to pass the bill. Then maybe you could say it narrowly passed. 8 senators narrowly passed the recreational marijuana measure. What is the word narrowly doing in there? All right, so you got almost no opposition today, but this is the kind of stuff down there at the Post that causes you to get demerits. The bill passed 8-7. Forget about the narrowly. Voting in favor of the measure were, and we know who they were, the usual suspects, right? And then a list of those who voted against it. While the governor has said she conceptually supports the idea of legalizing recreational marijuana, in the days leading up to Wednesday's votes, many have asked public officials to give the issue time for further discussions in public and at least allow for a thorough study to be conducted. This will not be an easy decision for Leon Guerrero, and it will be one on which she will get a lot of pressure and input from various people and organizations that have in some fashion helped her get elected. I wonder how that all sorts out. I wonder how many of the antis actually were backing Lou Leon Guerrero when during the campaign she said, yeah, I'm in favor of it. One would think that would tend to be would narrowly work against her with anti-cannabis folks, right? Editorial says this will not be an easy decision for Leon Guerrero. I'm going to take an opposite position. I think it's going to be a very easy decision for Governor Lou Leon Guerrero. I think Governor Lou Leon Guerrero made up her mind that she would sign this bill the day that Clint introduced it. Now, she will have to play the game a little bit. She will have to at least pose as though she wants to give everybody a fair chance to speak. I would ordinarily say his mind, but help me out here. What pronoun should I use?
Their mind.
Yeah, their mind.
Is this coming from your crystal ball?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
I'm just checking because it's pretty reliable.
I looked in my crystal ball, and it looked all the way back to the day that Clint introduced this bill. Yeah. So she will go through the motions. She'll give everybody, excuse me, a fair hearing. There may even be a little bit of of studied head shaking and grimacing, a little showing of angst, like wow, stuff like that, right? But while she's doing all this, she's going to have the pen, holding the pen behind her back, and she will whip that pen out and she will sign this bill in a fare thee well. And in the meantime, trying to appear as even-handed as she possibly could, even though she tipped her hand early in the game. Okay, going back to the editorial. It says, this will not be an easy decision for Leon Guerrero, and it will be one on which she will get a lot of pressure and input from the various people and organizations that have, in some fashion, helped her get elected. I don't know about that. We urge the governor to think thoroughly and to trust her instincts. As an elected official, a mother. That's right. You know what?
You don't say.
Yeah. Leon Guerrero is the first female governor of Guam.
Wow.
Did you know that, Real Joe Cruz?
I did. I forgot, though.
You forgot.
For a minute.
Yeah.
For a minute.
Because you haven't heard it for the last minute, right?
You're right, sir.
Yeah. Okay. She should trust her instincts as an elected official, a mother, and a former healthcare professional, no matter what her circle of advisors and influencers may have to say. Now, I could also use an analogy here based on blowing smoke, but I probably shouldn't, since that's what we're really talking about here is marijuana smoke, right? Yeah. Amid the noise from different fronts, Governor, now this is addressed directly to the governor. Governor, we hope you reflect on what you think is good for Guam and the people who call this island home. That's the Post editorial. What the people of this island, who call this island home, what's best for them. I think we already know the answer to that. I think we already know what Governor Leon Guerrero thinks is best for the island. And I will take a certain amount of enjoyment watching her go through the motions before she gets around to writing Leon Guerrero on the bottom of Clint's bill, which is exactly what I think is almost foreordained since Clint introduced that bill. Okay, I'm going to go from here to the card. The card's getting kind of thick here. So this is what I got on the card for today. I've got Arnett versus Clint. I've got Rory versus complexion. I've got Melvin Wampat Bora versus the United States. I've got Ram versus the left. GPD versus Chatras. Mueller versus Mueller. And let's see, yeah, I think that's pretty much it. That ought to keep us busy for the rest of the day. So I'm going to start right out here with Arnett versus Clint. Joe Arnett is the president of the Chamber of Commerce, in case you didn't know, Real Joe Cruz. The chairman of, excuse me, he's the chairman, not the president. The president is, what's her name? Her last name is Castro, Catherine Castro. So the way the chamber works, they have a board of directors, and they have staggered elections. They elect half the board every year, and the chairman chooses an employee who is the president of the chamber. They don't change presidents very often. Catherine Castro is the current president. Joe Arnett is the chairman. The chairman of the Guam Chamber of Commerce thinks Governor Leon Guerrero should consider vetoing. Now, let me look at Facebook here. Wow, I said consider vetoing the cannabis bill, and I didn't see the board, the Facebook light up with comments from the other Joe Cruz, etc. By the way, I had the very first post on the board this morning was from Lee Stolle, who's pretty much a regular, and Lee Stolle said, "Good afternoon, Senator and Joe Cruz."
Nice.
Well, there's an ambiguity here because yesterday another Joe Cruz name got mentioned so often because of his posts on Facebook that I'm not sure if Lee Stolle is wishing a good afternoon to you, the real Joe Cruz, or if he's wishing a good afternoon to another Joe Cruz.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Now, of course, you know what I'm hoping for.
You're hoping it's for the other Joe Cruz.
I'm hoping it's for another Joe Cruz.
I heard you, sir.
You've got to put a stop to the growth of this cult of personality.
Apologies.
One of these days, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. So the story says the measure passed by a vote of 8-7. Now, in the news story, it passed by a vote of 8-7. In the editorial, it narrowly passed by a vote of 8-7. I wonder, do you think it was the same vote, real Joe Cruz?
Could be.
Yeah. And the article goes on to say 10 votes would be needed to override any veto. And Arnett said that he thinks that Governor Leon Guerrero should veto the bill. When asked if he thought a veto should be issued, Joe Arnett said, yes, if that's the only alternative. The chamber thinks the bill is premature. The chamber submitted testimony on the bill prior to the vote, arguing in part that a more thorough analysis on an array of issues needs to be addressed before making this bold decision. Arnett said the chamber's position has not changed. We advise to wait, he said. We need to take a stronger look at it. I don't think all the questions have been answered, Arnett said. Recreational cannabis could create a problem for visitors from Guam target market in Japan and Korea. And along the same lines, about recreational cannabis creating a problem, I have another article that appeared in today's Post. You may have seen it, but let me read it. At 2:28 a.m. today, an earthquake about 35 miles deep and 185 west-southwest of Molesu struck. Like the two that preceded it, there were no reports made to Guam 9/11 of injuries or reports of damage. Yesterday morning, two quakes struck within a minute of each other. The U.S. Geological Survey recorded the first earthquake with a preliminary magnitude of 5.0 that struck 182 miles west-southwest of Molesu with a depth of 22 miles at 6:09 a.m. The second quake from yesterday was recorded at 6:10. It had a preliminary magnitude of 5.0 that struck 178 miles west-southwest of Molesu with a depth of 22 million miles. There you go. You see that, real Joe Cruz? That's what happened when you passed bills that legalized cannabis. I could see why Joe Arnett wants to take some time, and because obviously we haven't thought through all the ramifications of this. Arnett also expressed concern about the government of Guam's ability to enforce whatever rules and regulations are approved for the cannabis industry, and the Department of Revenue and Taxation's ability to collect the 15% excise tax proposed in the legislation. It's interesting. The same issue, the same day's papers talk about a gentleman filing a whistleblower complaint at the district court dealing with the $13 million that the Department of Revenue and Taxation did not collect in tobacco tax. The next subheading, 10 days to act. The governor has 10 days from today, not including Sundays, to sign Bill 32, veto it, or let it lapse into law. The deadline to act on the bill is April 9. The Guam Visitors Bureau also submitted testimony against Bill 32, urging lawmakers not to rush their decision. When asked for comment now that the bill has been approved, GVB General Manager Pilar Laguana declined to say whether she would lobby the governor for a veto. Instead, she issued a brief statement which says in part, the Bureau will continue to learn as much as we can about how this will affect the tourism industry. Our board of directors will need to review and discuss the measure in its final form. So, two major players in the community, Chamber of Commerce and the Visitors Bureau, have come out in opposition to Clint's cannabis bill. And I would add that was before the earthquakes hit. Going on, citizens in opposition. Eugene Santos, a recovering drug addict, said he has organized a group called Citizens in Opposition to Bill 32-35. People affiliated with the group have arranged to meet with the governor at Adelut between 1:30 and 2 p.m. today. In recent days, Santos has rallied opposition to the recreational cannabis bill. He organized the town hall meeting Wednesday night at the Tamuning Senior Center, which was underway at the same time senators were voting on the bill. And I'm going to go back again. I think senators made a big mistake when they did that. Had senators treated this bill the way they've treated every other bill, that is that once the bill had been sent to third reading, voting would be held up until the end of the session, and all the bills would be voted on at the same time. Instead of doing that, the members of the legislature jumped through hoops to get that bill engrossed and vote on it apparently to moot out Eugene Santos's town hall meeting. Had they not done that, had they been magnanimous and say, we understand that this guy is having a town hall meeting in order to allow the maximum public participation, we won't vote on this bill until our members have had a chance to go to the meeting. It potentially would not have changed the outcome, but I think it would have been an opportunity for those who were in favor of the bill to anger fewer people, which ought to be the objective of any senator who has gotten behind controversial legislation. The measure's author, Senator Clinton Rigel, issued a statement saying, while some opponents have come out at the 11th hour with loud voices and seemingly orchestrated opposition, we believe a silent majority supports Bill 32. And I would refer you back again to my comparison of depth of feeling versus breadth of feeling. Breadth of feeling, there may be a lot of people who say, legal marijuana, I don't care, it's okay with me. Sir, if you're in favor of legal marijuana, would you mind lifting your finger? Well, I'm in favor of it, but I'm not going to lift a finger to support it. On the other hand, there are those with depth of feeling, like Eugene Santos, who goes to the trouble to set up a town meeting at the mayor's digs in Tamuning. Now, if you're running for office, guess which of those two categories perhaps pose the greatest threat to you. See if you can figure that one out. Apparently, Senator Clinton Rigel and the pros didn't care. They wanted to get that bill passed on Wednesday night and get the hell out of Dodge, apparently. And then the senator said his online petition urging passage was launched just 1 week ago, and currently has 3,255 signatures in support of the measure. A good way to run the government by petition. Senator James Moylan, I'll go back a sentence. After extensive research, Regil said in his release, the conclusion is that legalization is the best avenue for Guam. Senator James Moylan, who voted against the measure, said he believes the responsible approach for our island would have been to take deliberate steps to understand its broader ramifications. In her statement, Senator Regine Bisco-Lee, who voted in favor of the Cannabis Industry Act, that's Clint's Bill 32. Remember how I complimented Clint on his marketing techniques?
Yes. Well played, sir. Well played.
It is the Cannabis Industry Act. Well, who could be opposed to a new industry on Guam?
Yes.
It's not Clint Regil's feel-good bill. It's Clint Regil's Cannabis Industry Bill. And then Bisco-Lee goes on to say, Bill 32's path to the floor followed every law and rule governing the legislative process, as though this is unusual. It did. It did. They checked off all the boxes, except for a couple. You know, when the Rules Committee put that bill on the agenda, there's not a 7-day notice for the Rules Committee meeting. And there was not a 7-day notice for the legislative session in which that bill was considered. Open government law, which, according to the statute that the legislature itself enacted, apply to it. But Senator Lee says, followed every law and rule governing the legislative process, except a couple, which maybe they don't care about. And then I would again come along and say, well, you know, maybe you followed the rules, but you really deviated from the standard procedure. And the standard procedure, I'll come back to that right after this break here.
The stations of Choice Broadcasting are celebrating April 2019 as National Earth Month with the return of our Upcycle Mascot Showdown. We've invited the public elementary schools to set the example and build their school mascots completely out of recyclable material. Stay tuned to our stations to see how you can vote for your favorite school this April. Celebrate Earth Month with our students in the 2019 Upcycle Mascot Showdown. Brought to you by the Agana Shopping Center, Lolita Kamet from Remax Diamond Realty, Sylvan Learning Center, Family Finance, Buddy's Home Furnishings, and the stations of Choice Broadcasting.
Looking for a great deal on a new Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, or Ram? Then get to Cars Plus in Mighty now for our spring sales event. Like a new Jeep Compass Sport, $166 per paycheck. Or a new Chrysler Pacifica LX, $220 per paycheck. Or save $8,500 on a new Ram 1500. How about a new Jeep Wrangler Sport? Only $274 per paycheck. Low 1.99% financing is available on approved credit. Save thousands during our spring sales event going on now at Cars Plus in Mighty. Cars Plus, driven by you.
And now back to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the one radio show politicians don't want you to listen to. Call now, 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
Yeah, so what I was saying just before the break was that although all of the rules except the open government law may have been followed, the traditional way that the legislature approves bills was not. The senators jumped through a lot of hoops to get that bill enrolled, as you were engrossed, and voted on Thursday, instead of doing it the ordinary way, which is to go through all of the bills on the agenda and then vote on them all at the end of the session. So once again, a maneuver guaranteed to anger those who are on the other side. Not that that means that the bill is bad. It just has an impact on the viability of senators that do things like that, because after all, they are elected by the people. So I noticed during the break I got a couple of calls, Mark and Todd, and I suspect they probably called in because they didn't realize that there was any sort of a causal connection between the earthquakes and the passage of the cannabis bill.
Yeah, I believe so, sir.
Yeah, so maybe they want to comment on that. So Go ahead, Todd.
Yes, sir. How you doing today?
Good.
Good. You know, they rushed this bill and passed it real quick, and I find it funny because we have other pressing issues that need to be taken care of way ahead of this, like the fact that we have money that's being used for the highway fund here on Guam and being misappropriated, yet our roads here are disastrous, to say the least.
I agree, Todd, and I've made that same point. And I think Therese Terlahi made that same point that, you know, where is what is up with our community when we spend so much time on gambling at the carnival and legalizing marijuana when we have other really serious problems, correct?
Absolutely. I almost get in an accident sometimes on a daily basis because of these roads on my motorcycle, and it's quite shocking and rather scary riding to back and forth to work, or even just going on a pleasure cruise around the island. You really have to be vigilant whenever you're out there, and I think that these issues need to be taken care of well before we work on something like carnival funds or marijuana bill.
I agree 100%, Todd, and thank you very much for calling in and chiming in on that point.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate your time as always.
Okay. So then let's see, on line 2, I've got Mark. Afternoon, Mark.
Hey, afternoon, Senator. I need you, if you could, maybe put your lawyering hat on for a second.
Okay, I'll give it a shot. I'll take my dunce cap off and put on my lawyer hat, okay? If there is a difference between the two.
One thing on this that has concerned me was that I believe that there's a conflict now, the fact that we've passed a law that is in contravention with federal law. And Guam's code and oaths that these officials took said that they will basically obey the laws of Guam and applicable laws of the United States. And when this first started, it came up and it was, well, the legislature's legal counsel said it was okay, but never explained how it was okay. And that's one that I feel that we've had basically snake oil salesmen telling me that this bottle of elixir is going to cure everything that ails the human body, but doesn't explain how. And I've been waiting to hear an explanation of how this was not in conflict with federal law and how it could be even remotely considered. Okay, the lawyer said it was okay, but how did he come to that conclusion?
Interestingly enough, Clint referenced that opinion on the floor of the legislature and picked out a couple of sentences that use words like possibly and arguably, etc., but he never shared the opinion with us. So I agree with you. I don't think that that's the law. And when this first came up, I once again called attention to the typical lawyer's toolkit. If you haven't heard it before, I'll describe it, okay, Mark?
Okay.
A lawyer has a toolkit, and in that toolkit, he's got a pair of dung-colored glasses. He can put the glasses on, and he can see every bad thing that could possibly happen 3 miles down the road. He has in that toolkit, he has a knife that's so sharp that you could split hairs with it. He has a pocket calculator that has an algorithm in it that would help you determine how many angels can dance on the head of a pin. There is a satchel full of monkey wrenches in that toolkit that the lawyer could throw in any process that's ongoing. But perhaps most importantly, there is a can of whipped cream in that lawyer's toolkit. And I used an analogy to explain the use of the whipped cream. If a dog, a stray dog comes up on your porch and doo-doos on your porch, you could get a shovel and clean it up, or you could go inside, get a can of whipped cream and spray it on the top. That way it wouldn't look so bad, right?
Okay.
And that's what I think we're dealing with here is a lawyer's toolkit and the use of the can of whipped cream until I actually see that opinion and not a couple of sentences that lead me to believe that the whipped cream was used. But you're absolutely right. That bill is in contravention of the Organic Act, and it's in contravention of the oath that every single one of those people took when he was sworn into the legislature. And I haven't heard any of them come out and say, well, you know, it's really not hypocrisy to take an oath to do something and then do something different because there's nothing that comes after the word because.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, the other one that just strikes me is, again, I'm trying to put all the pieces together and, you know, add up all the numbers. And they're saying that, you know, we're going to have this huge amount of money come in. But yet we can't get the money from the bingo parlors. We can't get the money right with the people that sell tobacco products. We can't get the money for, from the gambler, or, you know, the machine, Pinko or Plinko or whatever, you know, the machines that are out there in all these.
The game rooms?
The game rooms. We can't get the money from that, but we sure as heck are going to collect at least $2.5 million or more with legal marijuana. Yet we can't collect and don't have the ability to collect on everything else correctly, but this we will.
All good points, Mark.
I mean, I won't say I'm against it, but I would sure like to know things that were done and are done. Like I said first, how did we come to the conclusion that this was not going to be against federal law? And to say, well, the states in Colorado, and I mean, I heard Colorado so many times, I was like, well, if Colorado is such a great place for this, senators, why don't you pack your bags and head to the Mile High City?
Maybe in our quest for political status, maybe we could petition the national government and the state of Colorado to make Guam a county of Colorado.
They wouldn't want us.
Okay, Mark.
I know. This whole thing just strikes me, and as the other gentleman said, there are so many other things that the new legislature should be looking at and addressing, and yet we're dealt with this in such a manner that, you know, well, if it was so important and you were so confident, why didn't you just wait a year or two and let the people vote on it? That's why you did the medicinal marijuana. What, we're not capable of making a vote about recreational marijuana?
Good points, Mark. Very good points. I appreciate your calling in and sharing your viewpoint.
All right, Senator. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you. Okay, and then I've got Rommel on line 3. Good afternoon, Rommel.
Hey, good afternoon, Senator.
Hey, Rommel, you got a radio on somewhere in your house. Can you turn it off?
I do. I just turned it down.
Okay.
I'm sorry about that. I just want to thank those people that showed up today to Adelup, and there was like a few of us, and I could see the sincerity of those guys that were there, and the concern too as well. Hello?
Yeah.
Yeah, and, I just want to thank them all. And I hope if another thing comes up, all of us that really oppose this law, the legalizing marijuana, should come out and show the governor that we don't want this in our island. And, because it's like what he said, the other caller earlier, they just did this so fast that they're only on their first in how many months, and then they're going to pass this bill that's so important for Guam, and they just do it for how many months? I mean, it doesn't make sense. If it's so important, they should take their time and consider the new generation of people here in Guam, not just the money itself. So I really we should really stand up against this stuff, because it's just not right for others to, for newcomers to come in, not even a year old in the Senate, and just run it over, like what he said earlier, that the medical marijuana, we were able to vote on it and everybody said no. And this one, legalizing recreational, we can't even vote. It's just not right.
Okay, I appreciate your thoughts on the subject, Romel.
All right, sir. Thank you very much. And I've been here and outside just listening to your show. It's really helpful.
Thank you very much. So, 3 calls already on marijuana. I had something that I put in my kit here a couple days ago that I kind of overlooked, but I'm going to go back to it for a few seconds here. I got a little time before for the next break. Go through the next break, and then after the big halftime show that you all enjoy so much, we'll go through the Facebook comments. But a couple of really interesting books that many of you would have read when you were in school. 1984 by George Orwell, and Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. And when we read these books, for me it was 40, 50 years ago, I thought, oh, it's really interesting fiction. I don't think any of these things are ever going to happen, though. Well, some of these things are happening right before our eyes. For instance, 1984 was a book about a totalitarian state that was perpetually at war. Can you imagine that? Can the United States being perpetually at war? Other than what's going on right now? And a government that was totalitarian and spied on its own people, etc. Actually, that's Aldous Huxley and Brave New World. In Brave New World, every home in the country had a screen in the living room, and it was a two-way screen, so government officials could observe you while you observe the screen. Kind of like what we're doing with Facebook and some of the social media, right, where we have these two-way screens in our house. In fact, I'm looking at you on one right now. 1984, the totalitarian book, the theory was that by changing the language, people's thought processes could be changed. So one of the things that the government did in 1984 was invent a new language called Newspeak. And the point of the language was to destroy what people thought they already knew by assigning new words to things. So here's an example, not from 1984, but from all around you right now. If I were to refer to the gentleman sitting to my right in the control room, according to the social pressures and the forced pretending that we all face right now, I should refer to him as they, even though he's only one person. So you look around you and you see how forces in society are trying very, very hard to change the language. But the part I really wanted to zero in on here is something from Brave New World called Soma. And this article that I'm looking at says the use of Soma to shape and control society in Huxley's Brave New World. This is the Brave New World described by Huxley. The future of the world is a place of thriving commerce and stability. Safety and happiness are at an all-time high, and no one suffers from depression or any other mental disorders. There are no more wars as peace and harmony spread to every corner of the world. There is no sickness, and people are predestined to be happy and content in their social class. But if anything wrong accidentally occurs, there is a simple solution to the problem, which is called Soma, S-O-M-A. The use of Soma totally shapes and controls the utopian society. described in Huxley's Brave New World, as well as symbolize Huxley society as a whole. Soma is the answer to all life's problems. It is invented in an attempt to distract society from worry, tension, and pain. The drug is rationed by the government and is normally consumed after a hard day's work. In this utopian society, people choose to know no pain. Instead of suffering, people fill their days with mindless acts they are predestined to perform. At the end of each day, everyone gathers in a crowded distribution room and waits eagerly to receive the one thing that truly makes the day worthwhile. Soma. Okay, well, we got a break here. I'll come back to Soma for a moment. Perhaps spend a little bit of time on our Facebook comments, and then maybe leave both marijuana and cannabis behind, at least for the rest of the program.
At Guam Regional Medical City, it is our mission to become the island's premier choice for specialty care, like cardiology, pulmonology, neurosciences, orthopedics, oncology services, and more. We aim to protect our island from heart attacks, strokes, cancer, and diabetic complications. But should you suffer from such diseases, we're ready with world-class options, both inpatient and outpatient. For more information, visit us at grmc.gu.
Attention homeowners, if you don't have a solar energy system on your roof from Micronesia Renewable Energy, now is the time to get one. MRE solar energy systems now come with battery storage for zero money down. This means that your home will have power even when the island power isn't available, like during power outages or during and after storms. The inconvenience of not having power for your home is a thing of the past. Don't be left in the dark. Call 632-2613 for a free consultation. MRE, the smarter choice.
Okay, so here we are back. So I delved into 1984 and Brave New World, not to make a point, just to kind of stimulate a little bit of thought process. And I'm not saying that marijuana is the equivalent of Soma and that our government, by legalizing cannabis or marijuana, is embarking down the road described in Brave New World. I do think, though, sometimes it's healthy to consider the hypothetical aspects of serious questions. And this whole cannabis-marijuana debate is a serious question. You don't need too much proof for that, other than the fact that so many people have so many strong opinions about it. So just let me take a quick cruise through our Facebook comments here. You can play the theme song if you want to, Real Joe Cruz.
Welcome back.
So I mentioned earlier, Lee Stoney said, "Good afternoon, Senator," and Joe Cruz. Of course, we don't know which Joe Cruz it was. It may very well be another Joe Cruz. Moving on, I've got Eddie Cruz, half a day Bob. Robert Camacho, half a day Bob. Chris Abalencia, hi everyone. Tom Van Ingen, hi Bob. And Real Joe, that cult of personality. And then Joe Cruz, another Joe Cruz. This isn't this is another Joe Cruz said, "Good afternoon, Real Joe," and the other guy. So I've been demoted to being just the other guy.
Sorry about that.
Talk about a cult of personality. Wow. I'm going to have some business cards printed up. The other Tall Tales. I'm the other guy on Tall Tales. Good shot, another Joe Cruz. Are you sure you're not another Joe? That's not you, huh? All right. Rico Blancafor, hello, Judge Bob and Real Joe Cruz. Well, at least I'm not the other guy for Rico. Nate Horn, buenas, ready for the ride. Landon Vince Bora, half a day, Mr. Klitzkie. Daryl Taggarty, legislature's votes are ground shaking, but miles off the mark. Yeah, well, that's the reason for that earthquake, a ground shaking vote. Thank you, Daryl. And let's see, we've got Lee Stolley again. Allow me to clarify my earlier greeting. I'm wishing all Joe Cruzes a good afternoon. Okay, I guess Lee Stolle never saw a Joe Cruz he didn't like, right? He said all Joe Cruzes a good afternoon, but especially the real Joe Cruz. Jesse Limtiaco, Guam Chamber fear-mongering again, just like they do about raising the minimum wage. Yeah, that's a good parallel, the minimum wage, and I never thought of that. James Howard, cannabis is good for Guam. Okay, James. Jesse Limtiaco, Guam Chamber begs to differ, but who cares? They are not our elected leaders. Who cares? Brad Hewitt, they are doing more for a cockfighting resolution than they did for legalizing for the legalizing marijuana law. Jesse Limtiaco, Busta, what did they do about the H2 crisis Guam faces? Not much. James Howard, the people have spoken, gentlemen. Yeah, well, the people can continue to speak, James. That's the point of Tall Tales. James, power to the people. Where have I heard that before? Jesse Limtiaco, they sure did. And Senator Clint Rogel has the fortitude to stick to his campaign promise. And yesterday when I talked about winners and losers, I picked out two winners, Talina and Clint. And my analysis is this, that the people that elect senators are always looking for someone who stands for something. And if the thing that a person stands for is something they like, all the better. But unless it's something that a person really dislikes, standing for something and being consistent is what voters are looking for. And I think both Clint and Talina did that. Here's another way of expressing the same idea. People would rather vote for somebody they don't like than somebody they don't know. And the way to be well known in the political world is to take clear positions, advance them, and stick with it. So I agree with you, Jesse Limtiaco. Hats off to Clint. He did have the fortitude to move forward on what he campaigned on. Brad Hewitt, good point. Legislature is not doing much about it at all, or the hospital losing CMS accreditation. I think he's referring to an earlier comment. James Howard, agreed. Pass it, pass, and let's move forward. Chris Abalencia, big pharma dollars won't allow the feds to change its classification. Now, I've commented on this before, and I see it exactly the opposite. I suspect that Big Pharma would love to see the feds change its classification because what enterprise in the United States has the ability to take a natural substance, modify it slightly, get a patent on it, develop it, market it, and make billions of dollars? And I got a hint. It's not Chodi's store. Let's see. James Howard, he is correct. However, once the feds legalize, which it will soon, what will be the argument? Well, a lot of the same arguments, James Howard. There are people who are against marijuana who do not see it as having a societal benefit, whether or not it's legal. Right now, it is not legal. Okay, time for that big halftime show. I'm going to come back and finish up the Facebook comments, and from there I'm going to go to Rory and complexion. Next item on the card.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Investigators zero in on the crash cause. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. The experts probing the parts and the data from the Ethiopian Airlines crash earlier this month, according to the Wall Street Journal, now believe a safety system designed to prevent wing stalls helped put that plane into a dive from which its pilots could not recover. And they found striking similarities from that crash and a Lion Air crash last October that killed 189 people. Both planes were Boeing 737 MAX aircraft since grounded worldwide. Boeing says it will make changes to the anti-stall system to make it less aggressive and easier to control. President Trump, in his first rally since the end of the special counsel's probe, without using the abbreviation, calling on Democrats to stop the ridiculous BS, partisan investigations, and apologize to the American people.
And join us to rebuild our crumbling infrastructure. Bring down the cost of health care and prescription drugs, which we're doing incredibly. Help us fix our broken trade deals.
President telling the crowd in Grand Rapids, Michigan, the special counsel investigation grew out of a plan to overturn the results of the 2016 election, but it failed. Republicans on the House Intelligence Committee told Congressman Adam Schiff Thursday they think he should resign the committee's chairmanship over claiming that he'd seen the evidence the Trump campaign colluded with the Russians.
Your actions, both past and present, are incompatible with your duty as chairman of this committee, which alone in the House of Representatives has the obligation and authority to provide effective oversight of the U.S. intelligence community.
Republican member Mike Conaway reading the letter to Schiff, who responded that he would not quit. As trade talks between the U.S. and China continue in Beijing, Asian stocks closing Friday higher. Dow futures are up more than 50 points. This is Fox News.
Shrimp and guacamole for Lent at Subway. The all-new shrimp and guacamole combines generous portions of whole shrimp and a spread of guacamole served on freshly baked bread, paired with vegetables cut fresh daily in restaurants and sauces that are sure to excite your taste buds. Hurry in, it's only available for a limited time. Other fresh Lenten flavors include the classic tuna or the mouth-watering greatness of our seafood sensation. Don't forget the Veggie Max, a delicious and tasty vegetarian patty. Visit any of our convenient locations today. At Subway, you make it what you want.
Laddie Stone Entertainment and the stations of Choice Broadcasting proudly present the Miss and Mrs. Curry Guam Pageant on Wednesday, April 3rd at the Sheraton Laguna Guam Resort. Tickets are $25 in advance and $35 at the door. VIP tickets are $50 in advance and $65 at the door. Tickets available at the High, Misa Zone, the Vault, and from any of the lovely curvy contestants. Doors open at 6 p.m. and the show starts at 7. Hosted by yours truly, Ryan the Mixologist, and the beautiful Liza Camacho. Special thanks to Pitbull Empire, Local Promos, Figure 8, One Punch Media, and the International Sports Center.
High above us later today, NASA astronauts will take a walk outside the International Space Station, but it won't be the history-making walk that was planned earlier.
NASA had billed today's spacewalk as the first for an all-female duo. It worked out nicely for public relations purposes, as it is also Women's History Month, and such an out-of-this-world pairing is historic. But not having a properly sized spacesuit for both women, astronauts Anne McClain and Christina Koch, forced NASA to swap McClain, who spacewalked last week, for Nick Hague. The move triggered online protests, and NASA even replied to the outraged tweets, saying it is inevitable through regular scheduling that two women will spacewalk in due time. In Miami, Eben Brown, Fox News.
The city of Chicago sending actor Jussie Smollett a bill for $130,000. That's how much money Mayor Rahm Emanuel says the city spent investigating what Smollett said was a hate crime committed against him, but which the mayor and the police superintendent have branded as a hoax. The state's attorney's office, the office of the state attorney Kim Fox, now confirming that she did not legally recuse herself from the case, despite interacting with members of Smollett's family. Arkansas will fight to keep a requirement of Medicaid recipients to seek work that has been struck down by a federal court.
Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson says a federal judge is wrong to strike down the state's making Medicaid enrollees find jobs. The court says the rule prohibits access to government programs, but Hutchinson says it's actually helping helping people.
Since last June, over 12,000 Arkansans have been referred to the Department of Workforce Services as a result of the work requirement and have found employment.
But still, 18,000 were disenrolled from Medicaid. The judge's ruling means no more will lose benefits, but those who already lost must reapply.
In New York, I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
In 1972, Jesus S. Leon Guerrero pictured a brighter future for our island and its people. With the trust and support of the community, he founded Bank of Guam. In celebration of our 47th anniversary, we're offering a Founders Day loan for up to $50,000, as low as 4.70 annual percentage rate. Visit any branch or bankofguam.com for more information. Subject to bank's lending criteria, terms and conditions apply. Offer valid until March 29, 2019. Bank of Guam, member FDIC.
Tired of your wireless prepaid service cutting you off when you reach your limit? Introducing Unlimited for Less with the new $2.50 a day prepaid plan from GTA. Enjoy unlimited local calls, local text, and unlimited data for only $2.50 a day. And now including unlimited calls and texts to the U.S. You can post, call, or text without worrying about reaching your daily limit. Come into any GTA store or visit gta.net for more information.
Well, I know you all enjoyed that big halftime show that we have every day at 1700. So we're back for the second half of Tall Tales. I'm going through the Facebook comments here, and I left off with Brad Hewitt. And this is what Brad Hewitt says. He's addressing a comment by Chris Abalencia. Brad Hewitt said, and Chris Abalencia says, Big Pharma won't allow the feds to change marijuana's classification. And Brad says, I want the feds, turn my own volume down here. I want the feds to reschedule marijuana. That way the scientists can legitimately test it for each and every one of the claims that it cures. If it happens to somehow work, so be it. But if it doesn't meet the outrageous claims that some use, they will once and for all be hushed. And I can't imagine that the same drug could cure dandruff and athlete's foot and just about every other symptom in between, but maybe. I'm not a doctor. James Howard. James Howard says, taking the inactive gives Guam an opportunity. I think he means taking the initiative, right? Because the anti-cannabis folks want Guam to take the inactive. Hi, Camacho. Mark, been saying this for the last month, echoing what the telephone caller named Mark said. Jesse Limtiaco, more degrading comments about Guam. And the point just scoffs. I don't know who the point is. Maybe that's me. I do a lot of scoffing. So it's probably me. If you're looking for a scoffer, it's probably me.
It's definitely you, sir.
Yeah. Joe Cruz. Now, again, this is another Joe Cruz. Says, yeah, thanks, Mark. Goodbye now. That's another Joe Cruz. Always so good with the phones, you know. Hello, goodbye. I'm going to put you on hold. Are you sure that you're not that Joe? No, that's not you, huh? James Howard, this caller has no faith in our island and the talent we have. Okay. Jesse Limtiaco. Mark, why don't you go back to Colorado? Because the people have spoken and Senator Rigel listened. Okay. I, Camacho, oppose or not, we're all people. Chris Abeluncia, ugh. Ramel, everyone voted yes for medical marijuana. Everyone? I thought it just narrowly passed. 8 votes was just barely enough. Narrowly passed. James Howard, doors of perception. Joe Cruz, again, another Joe Cruz. It would be so cool to smoke cannabis with Bob Klitzkie and talk about stuff. Well, I think the real Joe Cruz would tell you that you don't need the cannabis, but to talk with Bob Klitzkie is really cool. Right, real Joe Cruz?
Definitely, sir.
Yeah, you don't know how much I pay real Joe Cruz to say things like that. But thank you, real Joe Cruz.
You're welcome, sir.
Another Joe Cruz. The Wampat 10, remember again. The Port, news at 11. The Courageous 8, be pushing weight. Got it passed before too late. Wow. Let's set it to rhyme. The Scared tried to ghost our bill and steal the oceans. It's all just politics for the stranded, branded, and freshly landed. Okay, wow. Another Joe Cruz is really on a roll today. Brad Hewitt, maybe we ought to rename the show the Tall Tales with the other guy and a couple Joe Cruzes. Brad Hewitt, I find it very disingenuous for the lawmakers to ask for a referendum for medical that affects a small part of the population, yet when the population asks again for a referendum for a law that affects everyone on the island, these guys refuse to allow it to happen. Well, I got into that a little bit yesterday, and my theory was that the recreational marijuana folks had a strategy, and their strategy was, let's start out with medicinal marijuana. If we can make supportable cases that there is a medicinal value to marijuana, it really blunts the anti-marijuana sentiments in the community. I also suspect, I'm going to digress for a moment and talk about something called the Overton window. And the Overton window is a device that you use to see what is politically acceptable to a given elected body. If an idea would fit through the Overton window, then somebody will pass it. Someone will introduce it. And the test is, could someone introduce this idea and champion it and still get reelected? If the answer is no, then that measure doesn't fit through the Overton window. I'll give you a really good example. If 25 years ago someone said, please vote for me to be senator, because if I'm elected senator, I'm going to introduce a bill that would allow one man to marry another. 25 years ago, how far would that have gotten anybody, real Joe Cruz? If that were your platform, you couldn't get elected assistant dog catcher in Malolo. But the Overton window moves around, and as it moves, you can see things in the window that weren't there before. So the window moved to the point where that kind of legislation, a senator could champion that kind of legislation and still be reelected. Well, when the marijuana question first came up, my sense is that senators who gauged what was in the Overton window figured, I'm not going to introduce this and try to get it passed on the floor. I don't think public sentiment is there. However, if I can make a really good case for the medicinal effects of marijuana and then say, but I'm going to put it out to you, to the people, it might pass. I don't think it's going to pass as a straight up or down in the legislature, but there's a chance it would pass in a referendum, which it did. So it passed in the referendum. It took the sting out of the whole marijuana argument, and the fact that the government could never put it together probably worked in favor of those who favor recreational marijuana, because, as I mentioned, now that we have recreational marijuana, it moots out the medicinal marijuana, because if you need medicinal marijuana, why would you horse around with the note from the doctor and all the rest of this stuff if you could just go down to the store and buy it? So it was a pretty well-planned strategy, if that's what it was. If it weren't, it has all the earmarks of a really well-planned strategy. And that's why, in the beginning, when it was still a questionable measure, senators would go along with a referendum. But once we got to the point where the proponents figured they could get 8 votes, why horse around with a referendum? Takes too long. And obviously, in this particular case, time was of the essence. It wasn't a matter of days, weeks, and months. It was a matter of hours and minutes to get this bill passed when it got passed. Brad Hewitt again. James Howard, the talent could and should have been displayed already. Why does it take marijuana to display the talent? And then I'll go back here to, if I can find it, the comment that relates to. Probably can't find it. I'll read. Oh wait, I can go to the thread. James Howard, the caller has no faith in our island and the talent we have. I think that was Mark. And then Brad said, James Howard, the talent could and should have been displayed already. Why does it take marijuana to display talent? Limited ability, perhaps? James Howard, talent in cannabis. Brad Hewitt, that's a pretty sad commentary. I believe the people possess better talents than relegating them to mere drug dealers. James Howard, come on, Brad. Science, education, customer service, agriculture, fiancé, health are all some of the parts of the industry, sir. Come on, Brad. You're a smart guy, man. Oh, okay. See if I can get back here. That was a long thread. And I lost my Facebook connection. Yeah, I got it back. And then we got Jesse Limtiaco. Mark, why don't you go back to Colorado, because the people have spoken, and Senator Rigel listened. I guess I read that already. James Howard, it's been 5 years, pal. Jesse Limtiaco, I keep forgetting this is a conservative radio talk show. Facebook page. Rarely would we hear callers in favor of adult use. A. Camacho, oppose or not, we're all people. Chris Abalencia, okay, I've read these before too. But it is a conservative radio talk show. Guilty as charged. And here's Jack Hattick. Biba Beckness, half a day, Coach Bob. So we're going to be watching you on the I don't know if we're going to put you in at first base or in the outfield today, Jack. James Howard, Bob would be an awesome on cannabis talk war stories. Cool. Let's see who I got here. I got our Carl. Carl, I'm going to go through the Facebook a little while longer, and then I'll pick you up, okay? And then Nate Horn said, it passed, but nothing happened ever since. I guess he missed that part about the earthquakes, huh? Wow, Nate. A couple of serious earthquakes. It just barely missed us. Jose Martinez. It's not medicinal, it's therapeutic. Robert D. Camacho. I thought banks that handle marijuana money can be charged with money laundering. True. Pot businesses, therefore, are on the whole stuck working with cash, which causes problems for more than just tax collection. From what I read, the prohibition with banks is still in effect, as far as I know, yeah. You wouldn't be able to take a bundle of cash from your marijuana sales and deposit it in your bank account. And I mentioned also problems with insurance policies and also with the tax, because when you file your income tax, if you're a business, you only pay tax on your profits. As far as a cannabis business, you would not be able to deduct ordinary and necessary business expenses. You can expense the cost of goods sold, but not things like rent and power and water, etc. So it's not going to be as profitable as some of the proponents think. Then you got the banking dimension. Let's see, a couple more here. Jose Martinez, as you were, James Howard. I love this show. Me too, James. Thank you very much. At least we agree on something. We both like Tall Tales. And then Nate Horn says, I meant the referendum passed in 2014, but nothing happened since then until last year. Okay, I guess my reference to the earthquake was probably misplaced then. Okay, so our Carl, what can you tell me about what we've been talking about here today?
Hey, good afternoon, Bob.
Yeah.
I've been listening with great interest to the discussion going on about marijuana, although I've never taken part in it. I mean, I've never smoked marijuana, but I find it very interesting. And I'm glad that it is happening locally. The discussion, the debate, it's where I think it belongs, among the local population that is going to be affected by it. I don't think this particular issue belongs in Washington, D.C. I don't think it ever did. But my issue with the whole thing is the matter of priorities. I just find it very disappointing that with all the massive problems we've got facing the island, most recently we've seen CMS, the CMS, possible loss of Medicare. If that happens, that's going to be a disaster. That will be huge. And I think we're chasing the wrong priorities. What's done is done, but I just think that one of the main things that we should have faced early on out of the chute, instead of marijuana and gambling, which are vices, not that I don't think they aren't worthy of discussion and debate, but I think that's down the line. To me, the top priority we've got to face is we're incrementally going bankrupt. And the number one way we've got to deal with that is by figuring out ways to create the environment that will draw in business and investment capital, create more jobs, grow the tax base, instead of trying to squeeze more and more money out of the existing tax base. We've got to figure out how to grow that, to grow jobs, to grow taxpayers. There's the matter of government reform, which is very much needed. Consolidation of positions and departments, elimination of them, and they actually revived some government departments that had been put to bed, had been eliminated, and they revived positions, which is going absolutely backwards. So I'm glad the discussion is going on, but I wish it could have gone on months down the road, and I wish it could be done in a more patient and more methodical way and have it more well thought out. This is a critical decision. It's going to affect a lot of people, and it doesn't need to be rushed through. It needs to be handled very, very methodically, and unfortunately I'm not seeing that. I think it was somewhat rushed through. That's my impression. I don't know if you agree with me. But
well, I certainly do. And as I just mentioned a few minutes ago, some people are talking about days, weeks, and months. But on Thursday, it wasn't days, weeks, and months. it was minutes and hours. The rush was on to get it passed. According to Talina Nelson, to moot out the town meeting that was being held in Tamuning. And my own analysis was that had they taken a recess and allowed senators who wanted to go to the town meeting, those who were in favor of marijuana would have done themselves a big favor because the bill still could have passed. And had they followed the usual procedure, that is, go through their entire agenda, take all of the bills to third reading, vote on them, and then as you were take them to third reading, engross them and vote on all of them on the last day of the session, I think it would have set better with those who were in opposition to the idea. But they really did rush it through, regardless of what Regine Bisco-Lee said about following the rules.
Yeah, which is disappointing, considering how important the whole issue is, that we do it right the first time and not have to come back and fix things that we didn't properly think through. But to me, the main thing that we need to deal with, it all comes back to our financial situation. We're incrementally going bankrupt, and there doesn't seem to be that feeling of urgency, that sense of urgency that we really need to attend to growing the tax base. That's why there are people leaving the island, and many thousands and thousands have left over the years because of the extreme limit of opportunity. A good friend of mine who was one of my best friends in middle school, when he was 20, he went around the island, passed out over 30 applications. The best response he got was for security guard. So he left the island, joined the Air Force. He spent 30 years in, and he rose to Chief Master Sergeant, got 2 master's degrees, 2 bachelor's degrees, 3 associate's degrees. When he retired, he went into the federal government as a GS-12, and he has a great life in Texas. He's got a home there, and he's very happy. But that same story, some version of that, has been repeated thousands and thousands and thousands of times, and it's going to continue to be repeated. My own son came home one day and he said, Dad, he felt stuck in his position, and many people end up like that. And he said, Dad, I'm thinking of joining the military. And he did. And he went through 5 months of free tech training, and he's seeing the world. He's getting an education. But, we need to find ways to grow opportunities for these people. And I think the opportunities in marijuana, just my personal opinion, and are, I think, slightly to highly overblown. Just home industries aren't going to, in my opinion, and I could be wrong on this, aren't going to bring in, tens of millions of dollars that we need to fix our financial ship that is sinking. Anyway. Thank you for allowing me to chime in. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, Carl. So, Kellis, I noticed you there. Give us a buzz back, and I'll get you on the air right away. If you want to call back, always appreciate your comments. Talking about comments, James Howard chimed in while we had our Carl on the line, and he said, on the real guys. Now, I don't know if that means you, Real Joe Cruz. If you don't agree with cannabis, okay, cool, then go fishing, play golf, and no harm, no foul. Kind of like the Second Amendment rights, which I totally agree with 100%. Well, okay. Good call, James Howard. And then James also says, let's start fixing them and start talking about, let's see, let's start fixing them and stall talking about it. Same story, different year. Okay, well, anyhow, if you have something that you want to add to the marijuana story, this would be a really good time to do it. Kellis, I'm hoping you call back. And if you do, even though I'm going on to another subject, I will pick up the phone. I'm going now to Menogate, the continuing story of Menogate. You'll recall Menogate goes back to Bernadette Stern Menno's slip and fall at the port, of the allegations that there were backdated documents weren't turned in, etc. 6 people got fired in the wake of Menogate, and the cases of the terminations have percolated through the courts and the Civil Service Commission to the point that none of them is completely has been completely finished. Then enter Rory Respicio. I'm going to come back to this after the 7th inning stretch.
Help celebrate Earth Month with 93.3 The Point and the return of the Upcycle Mascot Showdown. Stay tuned for details on the upcoming live event and how you can support your favorite school. The Upcycle Mascot Showdown, brought to you by Lolita Kamet from Remax Diamond Realty, the Agana Shopping Center, Sylvan Learning Center, PBS Guam, and 93.3 The Point.
It's a seafood celebration on the Lent menu, now back at King's Restaurants. Your tasty favorites like salmon curry, orange shrimp, and whole deep-fried parrotfish will have you swimming with flavors from the sea. Our fried rice with salmon or shrimp will make ordering easy and delicious. It's a seafood celebration on the Lent menu. Available all day, every day, just for Lent, and only at King's.
So Jack Haddock suited up, and with the crack of the bat, Jack got up and went to the restroom. So I guess this just wasn't Jack's day. But we'll give him another chance. On Monday, we'll be watching Jack. He's made some really dramatic plays, much more dramatic than today. But so much for Jack Haddock. That was a 7th inning stretch, so we got a little less than a half an hour to go in today's Tall Tales, and I was back to Menogate again, and I was describing that the Port 7 got fired because of what are alleged irregularities in the handling of a slip and fall case by Bernadette Stern Menno, thus the term Menogate. And the cases percolated up and down in the Civil Service Commission. No complete resolution of any case. We watched the percolation, the up and down motion, without interruption until Rory Respicio was appointed the director of the executive manager of the commercial port. And you'll recall that after the election, but before the inauguration of the Leon Guerrero administration, I looked in my crystal ball, as you were. I got a dispatch on the Tall Tales political intel line, which was very ably decrypted by the legendary Real Joe Cruz. And the decryption showed that Rory Respicio was going to be appointed executive manager at the port. This caused me that night to go home and dig around in my closet and find my old crystal ball. I looked in my crystal ball and the next day announced that what I had seen was that Rory's appointment as executive manager might be good news for the Port 7, all of whom were out of jobs and had pending cases. As luck would have it, on Rory's first meeting with the board at the port, he announced that he made 2 announcements. One, he wanted to get rid of Mike Phillips. And the second announcement was that he had appointed the deputy executive manager of the port, what's her name, Shinohara? Yeah, to set up a task force to examine what had happened to the Port 7. And he used words like fairness and, you know, if a termination is political and it needs to be fixed, et cetera, without actually coming out and saying it. The implication of Rory's remarks was, we got to get, you know, we got to help these people out, get them back to work, et cetera. And he, one of the first things he did, they had been banned from the port property. The former management thinking that would not be a good idea for the Port 7 to come in and talk with potential witnesses, look at documents, whatever. Anyhow, Rory canceled that. They could come and go at the port with carefree abandon. So Rory made that announcement at the board meeting. Well, then it came out much later that at the beginning of the Port 7 investigation, an assistant attorney general named Nelson Warner was doing a criminal investigation of the Port 7. He had asked the executive director of the Civil Service Commission not to make public any documents furnished to the commission by the Attorney General's office because it might hamper their investigation and potential prosecution. The next day, Senator Rory Respicio wrote to La Morena, the executive director of the commission, accusing Warner of prosecutorial misconduct. As if by magic, the Attorney General at that time, Lenny Rapadas, wrote to La Morena saying, forget about Warner's letter. I'm withdrawing that. So Mano was fired, and guess what happened to Mano after she was fired at the port? Guess where she went to work next? Can you guess, Real Joe Cruz?
The legislature?
And for which senator?
I'm not sure, sir.
I'll give you a hint. His first name starts with an R.
I'm not sure,
In
sir.
fact, his initials are RR. Try harder, Real Joe Cruz.
Could it be Rory?
She went to work for Rory, yeah. Almost immediately, she went to work for Rory. So Rory wrote to the Attorney General accusing the investigator from the Attorney General's office of prosecutorial misconduct. He employs Bernadette Mano. The first act that he takes with respect to the board of the port is saying that I've appointed this task force to get to the bottom of this. And then when one of Kurt Vandevelde's clients comes before the Civil Service Commission, Curtis Vandevelde says, we'd like to have this case continued for 90 days because the port has indicated some willingness to settle. And Darlene Hitton, who was there as the counsel for the port, said, we don't know anything about any settlement. So then the latest item here in Menogate is what I call Rory versus complexion. And I suppose I could have called it Rory versus Max Factor, or I don't know the name of any other makeup. Do you know the names of any other makeup companies, Real Joe Cruz?
Not really, sir.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, well, anyhow. So here's how it goes. During a status hearing before the Civil Service Commission on Tuesday, Daniel Del Priore told the commission that, as you were, that the parameters of a settlement agreement had been reached with the Port Authority of Guam Management. Okay, now this is for a different client, but he said the parameters of a settlement agreement had been reached with the Port Authority of Guam Management, and he was just waiting for the Port Board's, quote, complexion to change. before submitting the agreement for approval. Now, I don't think he's talking about the skin tones of the members or whether or not they had red faces, ruddy complexions, whether they were pale or whatever. Del Priore is a Guam Federation of Teachers field representative. At the hearing, CSC Administrative Counsel Eric Miller began by saying, quote, "Last time we were here, there was a discussion of a potential settlement. Where do we stand this afternoon?" Port Legal Counsel Darlene Hinton of the law office of Phillips and Berdallo responded, "At this time, the port has not accepted or given us any indication that they are inclined to settle this case." Del Priore said his discussions with the port left him with a different impression. "We have the parameters. It's verbally agreed to," Del Priore said. Del Priore then said, "To be perfectly candid, we're waiting for the port board complexion to change so that which management has agreed on will be ratified by the board." In other words, they're waiting to get rid of these slugs on the board now who aren't going to ratify the agreements that Rory enters into. When Rory made that statement before the board, one of the members of the board said Rory ought to be fired. That was Oscar Calvo, because he was proceeding ultra vires his authority. In other words, the board hadn't given him authority to do any of these things. Well, Oscar Calvo's term expired and he was replaced by somebody else. But is this what's going on? That management is saying, yeah, we want to settle this case. This is a different case. This is a case of a gentleman named Pineda, not one of the seven. So we want to settle these cases, but we got to get rid of these people on the board that don't know what we want to do, and we want to get some people that agree with management. It's an interesting idea. If that's the way we're going to run the port, then why do we even need a board? Del Priore said, "To be perfectly candid, we're waiting for the port board complexion to change so that which management has agreed on will be ratified by the board." Del Priore represents Benjamin Pineda, a former port stevedore who was fired for allegedly refusing to take a drug test. He is seeking reinstatement. Pineda is not one of the fired workers known as the Port Seven. Del Priore said he does not represent any of those 7 employees terminated more than 6 years ago over an allegedly fraudulent workers' compensation claim. Attorney Curtis Vandeveld, who represents 2 of the Port Seven, said port management has not made any settlement offers to his clients. However, in a text message to the Post, he said the port has invited settlement offers. And in January, the parties decided to delay status hearings for the purpose of exploring settlement. When contacted for comment about his remarks at Tuesday's CSC meeting, Del Priore told the Post, "We have not consummated any settlement. There is no verbal agreement. There is no agreement to accept the settlement proposal." When asked what he meant when he said the CSC hearing, at the hearing, that the port has the parameters of an agreement, the word parameters means the general idea of how to resolve the case. Del Priore acknowledged meeting with Port General Manager Connie Shimizu, Connie Shinohara. "We discussed it," said Del Priore, "but nothing has, per se, been agreed to." In January, Port General Manager Rory Respicio appointed Shinohara to lead a task force to review the termination of the Port Seven and at least 6 other port employees, including Pineda. When asked what he meant when he said he was waiting for the board complexion to change so that which management agreed to could be ratified, Del Priore said, "By that I meant that management understands that there are issues and problems with management's case." Yes, we had set out the parameters of a settlement, and they have to be submitted to the board, and it's one that ought to be considered for settlement. Who decides these things, I wonder? When asked whether a dollar figure was part of the parameters of settlement, Del Priore said, "We hadn't got to anything on that." He said the discussion with Shinohara concerned the merits of the case. Respicio said the port did not make a settlement offer to Del Priore in Pineda's case. They made a proposal, Respicio said. So this whole thing just doesn't look very good. Because the last time I talked about this, I mentioned that we have a new judicial invention, apparently. If an employee is terminated from his job, he has 20 days to appeal to the Civil Service Commission. The Civil Service Commission will hold an evidentiary hearing. The employee has the ability to subpoena witnesses, cross-examine witnesses against him. He has the right to call the whole thing, the full panoply of constitutional rights. If the Civil Service Commission goes against him, then the employee can apply to the Superior Court for judicial review. Same story. If that goes against the employee, then the employee has the ability to appeal to what we used to think was the highest court in Guam. That would be the Guam Supreme Court. But I have hypothesized, given Rory Respicio's involvement in Menogate, going all the way back to the very beginning and lasting right up until just this week, that we now have a higher court than the Supreme Court. It's called the Supremist Court, a court that's more supreme than the Supreme Court. And apparently the personnel on the court are Connie Shinohara and Rory Respicio. And the board at the port apparently is a body that needs maybe a dermabrasion. You know what a dermabrasion is, real Joe Cruz?
Yeah, skin abrasion.
Yeah, dermabrasion is kind of like a treatment that you kind of like sand off the top layer of your skin. And
to reveal new skin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's supposed to make your face look a lot better. I haven't tried it. I certainly need it.
Yeah.
But Del Priore, who represents this guy Pineda, is saying we're waiting for the complexion of the board to change. In other words, the implication of all of these things is Rory wants to settle, but he's got to wait till he gets some different board members because the current board members are not going to go along with a settlement. Now, we would ordinarily think that the way most boards operate is that a board would direct its executive director to begin settlement negotiations. And when you're dealing with these kinds of things, the board can meet in executive session. That's the idea. You know, if you've ever been in any kind of a settlement, that's kind of like playing poker. You don't want the other side to see your cards, because when the other side knows what your cards are, it makes it much easier for the other side to bet its hand. So Rory apparently is showing his hand all over the lobby of the Civil Service Commission, one way or another. We really want to settle here. Just seems like an extremely strange windup to Menogate. I would hope that we are a government of laws and not a government of men, and that all of the Port 7 cases reach an appropriate judicial resolution. I've also mentioned in talking about this, I've heard Mary Torres in describing another angle of this kerfuffle, that this whole Menogate matter spilled over into the confirmation of Danny Tydenko to the airport board. Danny was a chairman of the port board and was appointed to be a member of the airport board. But his confirmation hearing turned out to be kind of a relitigation of some of the things we've been talking about, and it gave Bernadette Meno and Mary Torres good opportunities to slam Danny Tydenko, and in Mary's case, Mike Phillips. So that was kind of another venue in which this entire matter was brought forward. So once again, being kind of a traditionalist, I would think that the way to go about this is that if the board members have an inkling that settlement might be in the board's best interest, they should take the initiative. But going back to what Mary Torres said, follow the money. You want to know what's going on, follow the money. Just like Deep Throat in the Pentagon Papers movie starring Robert Redford and what's his name? Can't remember his name. It'll come to me in a second. Anyhow, I'm going to wrap up the last 10 minutes here on the complexion. I might get into Melvin Bora versus the U.S. We got about 10 minutes till the end of another glorious week of tall tales.
The GCC Votech Class of 79 is back. Join them on April 27th at the Onward Beach Hotel for a night of dinner, dancing, skits, and reminiscing. It's been 40 years since graduation, so take advantage of this once-in-a-lifetime chance to relive the memories. There's also a memorial mass on Friday, the 26th, at the Santa Teresita Church. Be there at 5:30 for candle placement in honor of classmates who've gone before. Tickets for the reunion on the 27th are on sale for $40 a person. For details, find Connie Kittigwa St. Nicholas at 488-6108 or Kathy Diaz, 777-3243. Bebus 79ers. Save big. Save really big when you bundle up your insurance policies with Nanbo Insurance. Insure your home, auto, motorcycle, or business with Nanbo and enjoy great savings, up to 50%. When it comes to insuring your property, no one knows better than the company with over 50 years of service to the community. Don't compromise the things that matter to you most. Call Nanbo today at 477-9754 or visit nanbo.com for more information. Nanbo Insurance, serving you since 1968.
Here we go, down the home stretch, tall tales, and thank you, Rocio Merrill. She reminds me that it was Dustin Hoffman opposite Robert Redford in that movie. Robert Redford played the role of Bob Woodward, and Dustin played the role of Carl Bernstein, the two heroes of the whole Watergate kerfuffle, which you probably haven't even read much about, right, Real Joe Cruz?
No, sir.
Yeah. President Nixon, a break into the Watergate office of the Democrat Party. Anyhow, there was an FBI agent whose last name was Felt, who tipped off Redford and Bernstein, Woodward and Bernstein, to a lot of important things that implicated Woodward. And their code name for that person was Deep Throat. Now, filling in some of the blanks, back in those days, we were just getting into kind of legal pornography. Shows you how far we've come, huh? And there was a porno star called Linda Lovelace, who was a star of a movie called Deep Throat.
Oh, you don't say.
Yeah, so that's where that name came from. And Deep Throat, in explaining to Woodward and Bernstein some of the more important aspects of the whole Watergate break-in, said, follow the money. Now, I don't know that Mary Torres was attempting to rekindle our memories of that movie, but she said, if you really want to understand, well, my words, not hers, but basically what the import of what she said was, if you really want to understand the Port 7, Mike Phillips, Dan Tydenko, etc., follow the money. And I agree, because there's a tremendous amount of money riding on this. And the reason that there's a tremendous amount of money riding on this is that if a government employee who is fired is subsequently reinstated, the government is going to have to give him back pay for all of the wages that he missed during the time, excuse me, not he, they. Government is going to have to give them, even if it's only one person, going to have to give them back pay, including retirement and all the rest of the stuff for the entire time that they were out of work. Now you take the fact that we've got 7 people, and these were not low-level employees at the port. These were pretty high-level employees. So the government could be looking at a multi-million-dollar liability depending on how these cases go. Now, there's something I have to mention here. Get your law and order notebooks out for just a second. And that is that if an employee is fired, he has, under the law of contracts, under the law of contracts, there's the doctrine of mitigation of damages. He must take steps to keep the damages as low as possible. So what that means is that if an employee who is, let's say, a milkman gets fired, he has a duty to go out and apply for a job as milkman and for other milk companies. And if he's hired by another milk company, then that the money that he makes reduces the amount of back pay that his former employer owed him. That's part of the doctrine of mitigation of damages. And if the employee, the terminated employee, can't show that he made an effort to get another job and the same kind as the one that he lost, then it's very possible that he doesn't get any damages at all. The other part of the doctrine is that the money that a fired employee makes doing anything during the period of his termination is subtracted from the damage award. So that's the entire doctrine of damages. But assuming minimal mitigation of damages, if what it appears could be a possibility that Rory is dead set on getting these people back to work and paying them back pay, if that's what it is, this could be a substantial amount of money. Now, I don't know that that's what Rory's got in mind, but I have ticked off Rory's involvement here, and I suppose it's just a matter of speculation. But I'm going to keep a close eye on what I have nicknamed Benogate, and that again goes back to the movie because the whole Nixon scandal about the Watergate break-in was called Watergate. So henceforth, every scandal that comes along uses the word gate in the sense of the Watergate scandal. So I'm going to watch that one like a hawk for you, and as subsequent events occur, I will bring them to your attention. Next item on my calendar here is Melvin Bora versus the USA, but I think maybe instead of doing that, I'll go into Rahm Emanuel versus the left. I talked about this a little bit yesterday. I guess I'm not going to get very far into it, but Rahm Emanuel, mayor of Chicago, has committed grievous sins against the left. And I will pick that up on Monday, no doubt. I have to apologize. The real Joe Cruz and I are going to have to apologize. There will be no Tall Tales tomorrow. There will be no Tall Tales on Sunday. Much as the real Joe Cruz and I will miss Tall Tales, you're just going to have to wait until Monday. Of course, you could always go back and you could always go on Facebook and play some of the old episodes of Tall Tales if you start to Jones for more Tall Tales. So it's been a great week. See you next week.